The moment I saw young Ethan bolting down the street, his sneakers pounding the pavement like he was fleeing a wildfire, screaming about snakes, I knew disaster had struck. Ethan wasn't one for theatrics last summer. He'd brushed off a wasp sting like it was nothing. But now, his face was pale, eyes wide with terror, pointing at my shed like it had just unleashed a demon. I dropped my grocery bags, apples rolling into the grass, and sprinted toward the shed. The door hung wide open, a gaping violation of the security I'd meticulously maintained. As I neared, I nearly tripped over a pile of unfamiliar plastic bins stacked haphazardly by the entrance. Then I saw her, Lydia, the HOA president, neighborhood tyrant, clutching a clipboard and smugly announcing to two board members that my shed was now community storage. My blood ran cold. Behind her, one of my albino corn snakes slithered lazily across the incubator rack's top shelf. Another vanished beneath a box labeled holiday decor. It was a scene straight out of a horror flick, the kind where someone ignores every warning and opens the forbidden vault. I didn't need to scream. The chaos erupted on its own. A board member shrieked as a snake peeked from behind a wreath, bolting out of the shed. Lydia waved it off, scoffing. It's fake, probably a Halloween prop. Then a garter snake coiled up her clipboard, and her composure shattered. She screamed, flailing as I stormed forward, snatching the clipboard. Through gritted teeth, I hissed, "You broke into a federally licensed reptile facility." Lydia blinked, flustered, then doubled down. "This is an unused structure. As HOA president, I can reassign idle community property." I demanded to know what community property she meant, given I'd built the shed myself on my own land. She smirked, claiming it was within view of common space and thus under her control. My hand shook with a mix of fury and dread, not just because she'd trespassed, but because she disrupted 3 breeding trays of temperature-sensitive eggs, a delicate heating system, and enclosures housing mildly venomous research snakes. These weren't pets. They were part of a state-sanctioned conservation program. A bite wouldn't kill, but it could send someone to the ER with swelling and dizziness. I checked them every 3 hours, and now Lydia's intrusion threatened everything. She didn't care. She shouted to the gathering neighbors about my illegal snake pit, her words spreading like wildfire. A teenager recorded the chaos, and I knew this would spiral. Inside the shed, I gently retrieved the garter snake, but the incubator's heat had dropped, jeopardizing an entire clutch. My month's research hung by a thread. I faced Lydia, voice steady but seething. "You've committed felony trespass on a wildlife conservation site." She sneered, "Prove it." I marched to my house, grabbed my federal licenses, Department of Wildlife agreements, and a survey proving the shed was mine. Shoving them in her face, I watched her barely glance before scoffing. "Snakes aren't allowed. They're pests." I countered that these were protected species for endangered ecosystem restoration. She rolled her eyes, promised to talk to legal, and strutted off, leaving her bins and a shed full of panicked reptiles. That day, I worked frantically to stabilize the environment. 2 snakes had slipped under wiring, and one began laying eggs prematurely from stress. One hatchling didn't survive. That night, I stared at an empty coffee mug, reeling. This wasn't a hobby, it was a collaboration with the state's ecological unit to rehabilitate snake populations. The shed, with its sensors, filtration, and misting system, was 2 years of my life. Lydia had barged in like it was her attic. I hoped to reason with the HOA board, but the next morning, an email arrived, HOA emergency violation, demanding I remove all hazardous animals. Attached was a photo of Lydia holding a baby snake like it was a cobra, captioned, "Look what we found in our shared shed." Her smug expression wasn't fear, it was triumph. This wasn't about rules, it was about power. I wasn't just a snake enthusiast. As Dr. Eli Carter, lead ecological consultant for the state's Department of Wildlife, I had legal contacts and infrared footage of Lydia's trespass. The war was on. The shed's temperature had dipped 5 degrees Fahrenheit overnight, stressing a desert king snake into lethargy. As I cleaned, voices outside grew louder. Lydia was back, now with a megaphone, and board members Paul and Diane, declaring my shed a safety violation subject to inspection. Neighbors gathered, drawn by the spectacle. I stepped out, cutting through her nasal tirade. "These are federally protected reptiles for conservation, not pets. This is none of your business." But Paul tripped over a heat cable, freeing 3 baby corn snakes. Screams erupted. One woman dove into a bush. Another man spilled his coffee. Lydia ordered the shed sealed, but I knelt, collecting the hatchlings, and declared, "Your sabotage killed 1 snake and risks more. This is biological sabotage. She scoffed. If they're so important, they shouldn't be near families. I fired back. This lab tests human-wildlife coexistence. Your actions are now my case study. A teenager's video from the first incident had gone viral, showing Lydia shrieking as a milk snake crossed her foot. Whispers grew among neighbors. Then animal control arrived. Lydia strutted over, claiming I hid venomous snakes. The officer grinned. That's Dr. Carter. He trained us. Her jaw dropped. They confirmed the shed was on my property and her interference was a serious offense. Neighbors began asking about the snakes. Were they safe? Could kids visit? Lydia slunk away, fuming. The HOA meeting was her next battlefield. She arrived with a presentation of fake images and dramatic music, holding up a plastic snake as proof of danger. I played my surveillance footage, Lydia and Paul sneaking onto my lawn at midnight, planting dollar store snakes. The room exploded with laughter. Lydia screamed it was fake, but the HOA president, Henry, suspended her pending investigation. I wasn't done. My attorney filed a cease and desist and a lawsuit for damages, backed by temperature logs, photos, and vet reports. The state's wildlife department, alerted by the viral video, offered to fund shed upgrades, turning Lydia's sabotage into my gain. At court, Lydia's lawyer floundered, offering no evidence. The judge, unimpressed, watched my footage and issued an injunction barring Lydia from my property. She was liable for damages, fines, and legal fees. Neighbors warmed to me, some apologizing for believing her. Lydia's final act came one evening, caught on camera with a crowbar, tripping over a hose as my security system blared. Police cited her for violating the restraining order. She moved soon after, her house sold at a loss, her name a neighborhood joke. The HOA elected Henry, who rewrote rules to prevent overreach. We hosted Snake Awareness Day, with kids posing with pythons and booths selling snake-shaped cookies. My shed, once a target, became a conservation landmark. Lydia's noise was loud, but truth was louder. And my snakes? They outlasted her every hiss. The moment I saw young Ethan bolting down the street, his sneakers pounding the pavement like he was fleeing a wildfire, screaming about snakes, I knew disaster had struck. Ethan wasn't one for theatrics last summer. He'd brushed off a wasp sting like it was nothing. But now, his face was pale, eyes wide with terror, pointing at my shed like it had just unleashed a demon. I dropped my grocery bags, apples rolling into the grass, and sprinted toward the shed. The door hung wide open, a gaping violation of the security I'd meticulously maintained. As I neared, I nearly tripped over a pile of unfamiliar plastic bins stacked haphazardly by the entrance. Then I saw her, Lydia, the HOA president, neighborhood tyrant, clutching a clipboard and smugly announcing to 2 board members that my shed was now community storage. My blood ran cold. Behind her, one of my albino corn snakes slipped